and that we get all the content that we need to present it to you. Gonna go through the agenda first, and then I'm gonna go back to doing a roll call. As noted, we are happy that you're here, that you took time, especially on the busy week here in San Jose with the World Cup festivities and whatnot, to speak on this. Really appreciate it. We're gonna start with a presentation, as we always do, on the phase 2 program updates. Specifically the funnel package. And then there is going to be a discussion, as I mentioned, which is going to be the bulk of our conversation today on station design. The conversation is going to include both the station plaza at Diridon and the facade for the Diridon station specifically. When this group met last month, the conversation was about downtown in this respect. So there's going to be new content you're going to take a look at. We're looking to have a conversation on that content. Then we're going to move on to a conversation on the downtown east ventilation shaft facility. So that is following up on part of the conversation that was had last month. I'll speak on this in more detail later toward the end of the meeting, but there is an interim meeting happening with this particular working group in July. And we'll speak a little bit on what that's going to include toward the end. Once we're done with the design conversation, again, we'll have some prompts sprinkled through, and then we'll have also space for some general discussion. We'll have a construction update for you, and we'll move on, as I mentioned, to talk about next steps, the interim meeting, and any broad feedback that you have, we'll speak on that when we get there. Let's do a roll call real quick. We're going to start with the people that we have here in person, and then we'll move on to those that we have online. Again, trying to be efficient with time. Going to ask you to state your name, organization that you're representing, and then also rolling in the report outs. So if there's anything that you are wanting to share out with this group, members of the public as well, on your organization, anything you've got going on in the community, this is the place to share. Again, name, organization, and anything you want to report out. I'm going to start here to my right, James, and then we'll move on in that direction.
James Duran and Chamber of Commerce, Silicon Valley, nothing to report.
Tony Miranda, San Jose Chamber of Commerce, also Kitchell Construction Management Company, and chair of the Downtown-Diridon. So she'll be here.
Martin Close with the San Jose Region Authority. We're just further just those of you that have the region what's renovation at this time, but hopefully we're going to be on time and the budget. Bert Weaver with the Dallas Park Neighborhood Association. Nothing to report.
Eric Ivins, City of San Jose Department of Transportation. I'm also a member of the Design Review Committee.
Nate LeBlanc, San Jose Downtown Association.
Thanks, Nate. Moving on to anybody that we have online from the CWG.
Yeah.
Chris, you said?
Yeah, Chris Shea, Senior Vice President of Shark Sports Entertainment and the Vice Chair of the SJDA board, board for Downtown Association.
Thank you, Chris. Who do we have next?
I can go. Huáscar Castro, Director of Housing and Transportation Justice at Working Partnerships USA.
Thanks, Huáscar. And just knowing Huáscar, he is new to the CWG, first CWG meeting, so warm welcome to him. And then we have one more person.
James.
James. I think we have, do we have another James online? Oh, this is James joining online here. Okay. That's okay. Thank you, Kendall, and thank you all for being here once again. What we're going to do next, we're going to move on to our first presentation that is going to be a phase 2 program update. It's going to be given to us by Sarah Herson.
Thank you. I think I met some of you maybe in March. We talked about some of this, so do a little bit of a refresher and some of the progress we've made since then. So I'm Sarah Hersom, I'm with the program management team supporting this program, acting as a strategic advisor. Okay, so primary update today as far as the program goes, and this is both a recap and a tee-up of some of the conversations that have been happening at the board. Feels like there's been a lot of board meetings in the past month or so because it's dark in July. So there was an oversight meeting in May, the board meeting last week. We have an oversight meeting on Thursday, and then another full board meeting at the end of the month. The primary topic right now is around what we're doing with the tunnel contract. I think it's sort of what I touched on a little bit in March. To recap, although we sort of a shorthand you call it the tunnel contract, it really started as more than that. It was awarded 4 years ago as a progressive design build contract to a tri-venture, Kiewit, Shea, and Trailer. The scope of work included not just the tunnel, the interior build out, the track work, and the installation of the supportive excavation along with the excavation of the 3 underground stations. So for the past year or so, there's been a lot of conversation around sort of the next steps with this contract. And the progressive design build contract model is called different things, but it's generally split into 2 primary phases. Phase 1 or stage 1 is what we called it here, is comprised of kind of programming services, pre-construction work, advancing the design to get to a higher level of certainty and risk evaluation to be able to inform a lump sum fixed price proposal that's mutually agreed upon between the owner and the contractor. We have been struggling to get to an agreement on that lump sum cost with our contractor. They're a good contractor. They've been doing a lot of good work. It's pretty impressive what's happening at the West Portal. But we were just very far apart in price. That prompted the board, as you see on the slide, in 2025 to request that staff conduct a task force to look at what's our options if we can't come to an agreement on price with our contractor. So we did that. We did some industry sounding. We went back to our contractor and sort of, gave an opportunity to provide a sort of a final offer. Didn't seem like there was a path forward there, and so recommended to the board that we offer it them. We did a peer review late last year. Some of the feedback we got from the peer review that was with agency partners from LA Metro, Sound Transit, highlighted some of the risks we were aware of, but it was good framing for us about just the additional risks that come with what would be an owner furnished tunnel boring machine. Right now it's procured through the contractor. The design's also through the contractor. We off ramp, we bring on a new contractor that VTA would need to take assignment of those contracts. It changes things. So somewhere in the mix there, in addition to being told by the peer review, just sort of the merits of if you can find a way to make it work with your contractor, you should. KST came back to us and asked, said they would bring some different people and asked if VTA would be interested in sort of restarting some of those conversations if they were able to lower the price through a different commercial structure. So in addition to kind of talking through with the board about how we can mitigate schedule delay with off-ramping KST and bringing on a new contractor, reviewing some of the different commercial models that we've been looking at, which I think is what we talked about in March. We are now wrapping up what's been a several-month process of both working with KST to see if we're able to reconcile the price difference that existed before, but also do some further vetting of the alternative option, which before was our base option, which is offering the KST and bringing on a new contractor. Like I was saying, KST requested, inquired about VTA's interest in restarting discussions, which we did. As part of those conversations, I think a lot of people will ask sort of what's changed as part of that. I think in addition to some of the leadership changes, we looked at, as I mentioned before, a different commercial structure. So with stage 2 typically is structured as a lump sum fixed price approach. We're approaching this now as a target price, which is something that's been implemented recently in Canada, specifically in Ontario. They have a number of different tunneling projects happening there. And it's going quite well for them. I think as with any new commercial approach, there's going to be things we need to work through, but I think it's been implemented fairly successfully in Australia, in the UK, and now in Canada. And so VTA has been part of this process, has been speaking quite a bit with those entities. We also looked at reducing the core scope of work to eliminate some of those other elements that's not part of the core tunneling work. So the station excavation, the track work, and trying to see if that would help close the gap. So some of the work that's been going on, I think this graphic just shows there's sort of the parallel paths that we've been taking with pursuing both a new tunnel contract and an option of if something could be made to work with KST. You see the green is the we've been developing a draft agreement for a new procurement. At the bottom is KST engagement. In the middle of all the things we've been doing, that really supports both approaches. We finished the tunnel design. It's at 100% now, just undergoing final review and approval. Updates to general and technical requirements, and looking at what additional early work packages could be done to mitigate some of the schedule impact. So this summarizes the sort of reduction in scope that we're talking about now. So at least at this time, all we are currently contemplating, at least for a path forward with KST, is what we call the pre-tunnel construction work. So everything that needs to happen to be ready to actually launch the tunnel boring machine at the west portal, which is not insignificant. You're talking about, over $1 billion of work. The second line has a lot in that. That's basically building the tunnel. So the excavation plus lining it, plus any related instrumentation and monitoring and property protection that needs to happen to support that. The remaining scopes of work, so the fit out within the tunnel, the east portal, the added the track work, we've moved all of that right now to what we're calling optional scope. And so if in the future it's deemed prudent or beneficial from a schedule mitigation or for other perspective standpoint to move it in, we could do that. But right now, that's not what we're talking about with KST. So the target we're calling this cost model has a number of different names, and I think it can mean something different to different projects and agencies. But what we are calling this is a target price incentive-based approach, which means we've agreed on a target price with the contractor. And if they come in at that target price or under, there's a portion of their fee that is attached to them meeting that. And it's fairly significant. It's about a third of their fee is attached to meeting cost, schedule, and other KPI goals. So retention of key staff, qualities, and things like that. If they exceed the target cost, they lose that fee. If they come in under the target price, there's some gain share opportunities that are mutually beneficial for both VTA and KST. So, or any contractor. So I think the benefit to going down this path is that in any underground project, there's just a high number unknowns that exist when you're building underground that don't necessarily, it's unique to underground construction, especially that with a large diameter machine. And I think because of that, to ask for a fixed price from any contractor, including KST, it comes with often some risk premiums and high contingencies that are included in the price. We obviously saw that in the numbers with KST, but we also, as part of the industry sounding that we did last year, heard that same message from almost everyone we talked to. Just a very low interest in any type of fixed price approach for this project. So the benefit to this, there is some additional owner oversight that comes into play, but there's a much higher level of transparency with the cost, where it's, you know, we've been calling it in all of our negotiations and discussions, cost of cost. So they are reimbursed for cost, but not, you know, more than cost, aside from the fixed fee that's agreed to, that they're covered. So it allows them to really take out a lot of the risk premiums and sort of shifts that to the owner side. So you're not prepaying for things you don't know whether they're going to occur or not. So as part of what we're calling a business case, we looked at two tracks. We looked at the kind of comparing head to head, proceeding forward with under this new commercial approach with KST, or proceeding forward with the off-ramp as was agreed to by the board last year. We really just focused on elements that are differentiators between those options and not anything that's common to both, of which there is a lot that's common to both. So we're calling this revised commercial approach with KST is amended and restated agreement. So ANR for short, you may see that throughout the presentation. And we're calling option B essentially the off-ramp and procurement of a new tunnel contractor. This is a comparison of what the different schedules look like for these two different options. So just to confuse everyone, option B, which is the new tunnel procurement, is on the top, and option A, which is continue forward with KST, is on the bottom. I think we knew going into an off-ramp that there would be a schedule impact. And I think at the time our costs were so far apart and we did not see an ability to move forward with KST. You need kind of two willing partners there. That it seems that there was not really any way to overcome that cost differential. And so the schedule impact is just something that we had to accept, and we were continuing to look for ways to mitigate that. One of those ways that we have been attempting to mitigate it is by having KST construct some lower risk, I'll call it, but high benefit from a schedule standpoint, pre-tunneling construction activities, which they just started a few months ago. So it's like long lead procurement items for the precast tunnel liner, long lead procurement for the TBM. There's some foundation work that needs to happen at the West Portal, and some work related to energization of the TBM. So that's what you see in a pointer. No.
I think it does, yeah.
So basically the blue that you see is the West Portal construction that's happening right now. The green that you see is some of this additional pre-tunneling work. The purple is what happens in a new procurement. So we have to release an RFP that would be later this year. We go through the whole procurement process, go to the board probably late next year, award it, and then the remaining pre-tunnel construction work, which is not really suitable to contractor handoff, would be very much higher on the risk profile and not really recommended, would need to happen after contract award. So we're seeing that by finding a way to stay enforced with KST, we can mitigate about 20 months of schedule delay. We also looked at risk considerations, and some of this was flagged by the agency peer review that we did. Like I was saying before, one of the key areas is what we had heard from our industry feedback was that it was, I think, virtually unanimous that really none of the contractors were interested in taking ownership of a TBM, that they really had no part in designing or procuring. So it would need to be an owner furnished machine. With that comes, we would need to renegotiate performance guarantees and some contractual things with Parent Connect. So that's obviously mitigated. If we stay the course with KST, there's the uncertainty that comes with a procurement of not, you can have industry sounding and several rounds of that, but there's just uncertainty in the market, especially right now, that exists with the new procurement, along with potential for further delays, change in the design ownership. Right now it resides with the contractor. With the new procurement, that the VTA would take assignment of the design subcontract and additional, interface complexity at the West Portal. So all that to say, this is kind of what our results are looking like right now. So I'll pause on this for a minute, but essentially through this sort of extended negotiation discussion with the contractor, we've been able to bring their price down over $500 million. We've also been able to shrink the schedule by about 10 months. This has all been sort of a collaborative negotiation looking at in the spirit of this new commercial model. Similarly, with VTA's internal estimate, we took some of those parameters that were negotiated and vetted and agreed to with KST, especially those areas that were the source of kind of high discrepancy in the estimates before, and applied some of those same directed parameters now that we're comfortable with this is appropriate as a basis for any estimate, applied some of that to our internal estimate. That's what's in green. So we still have a gap. We're about $300 million in our internal estimate, less than what KST is at. But other key the decision on this doesn't really come from cost alone. There's the schedule mitigation and the risk mitigation. And there's a memo that went to the board, and there's a little more detail that we go into about this, but you can, using ranges, it's roughly $500 million for schedule and $500 million for risk, with a lot of numbers behind that, that are mitigated by staying the course with KST. So if you look at all of that together from a financial and a business perspective, although if you just look at the cost, there's still a discrepancy. It's holistically more advantageous to stay the course. That is what we have included in the board packet and are proposing right now as sort of the path forward for construction of the tunnel would be to finalize our negotiations with the contractor for this revised commercial approach to be applied to stage 2. We are also aware that there's a lot of uncertainty right now with inflationary pressures and rising construction costs for the rest of the program, with funding uncertainty, both at the state and federal level. And I think in an effort to try to maintain momentum and avoid additional costs being incurred by stopping and waiting to get certainty on all of that, which could take quite some time. We're trying to sort of reach a happy medium of requesting that the board authorize us to advance work for the next year under this new commercial model with KST, with the intent and sort of leaving the full option open for us to have them build the tunnel, but not asking the board to commit to everything with some of that uncertainty. So our goal would be that we have KST build the tunnel, that we not move forward with any procurement, but not asking the board to commit more than maybe people are comfortable with right now, given all of those uncertainties. So next up on Thursday, we're going to give much of this update to the oversight meeting. And similarly, at the end of the month, at the second full board meeting this month, that will include some of the update about, risk assessment, cost and schedule update, and the request for authorization for, sort of a limited notice to proceed with this revised commercial approach.
Thank you. So we'll take a couple minutes. For those of you in person, if you have a question or comment, you turn your name plate over or that way. I see, James, you have a number of questions on the chat. You mind if I read them all? Good. One of them, I believe you answered on the ground. So I'll read the other three, and then we'll move on to Tony and Bert before moving on to the design conversation. First question, who owns the TVM and what is its long-term value? Is Q the lead or an equal partner in the joint venture? And when will VTA make the decision on current versus new package?
So first question, KST currently owns the TVM, even though VTA paid for it through their contract, but KST owns holds the subcontract with Aaron Neck, who is the vendor supplying the tunnel. In terms of long-term value, I think the TVM itself, without some of the longer-term maintenance and storage and everything that comes with it, was just under $100 million. In terms of the long-term value, these TVMs are generally customized for a project. They can sometimes be salvaged and resold after the life is done, or after it's used for its initially intended purpose. But it was customized for this project. So in terms of value, it was an investment up front, and it'll be used for this project and might be able to be sold for some salvage parts at the end. Or made into a really cool playground or something like that. Kiewit is the managing partner of their JV, so they have a tri-venture, they're the managing partner, and then Shea and Trailer split the minority roles. And then you said, when is the decision going to be made? So we are making the recommendation to the board this month. If the board approves and authorizes our recommendation on June 26th, then we would finalize negotiations, finalize the agreement, and hoping to give NTP to the contractor by the end of July. So pretty quickly here.
But that's just for the additional pre-tunneling work, and then the decision about who will award the tunnel will happen later on. So probably fall, winter time frame earliest.
A reminder to our online CWG members, you can raise your hand if you have anything to note on this. If you have not been voted to panelists and you are a CWG member, please raise your hand as well, and we'll make sure to promote you so you can participate in the conversations that we have left. Checking in with Tony, Denver, noting we're a bit over time already. That's okay, just over time, so want to be brief.
Bravo, by the way, bring the contractor back to full, because that's significant. It's something we were hoping that would happen. Is there possible to go to that schedule real quick?
Yep.
Slide. So, based on that and where our funding currently is, how far can we go with what we have? Any concept? Is it halfway,
Yes.
farther away? What does that look like before any federal funds or whatnot maybe kicking in?
We have a funding plan that allows the tunnel itself, so not talking about the interior yet, to be constructed agnostic for when we get an FTA. So really relying on an accelerated drawdown of regional and state funds along with the local sales tax. So I think also at the board this month, there's a funding action to allow us to move forward with MTC to request the allocation of previously awarded funds. So there's $375 million through a regional measure. There's other money that MTC allocates through the state. So, I can't remember the exact number, but it's like maybe, it's over $1.5 billion. That's just through regional and state funds before you even tap into the local sales tax. So I think we're trying to be able to move forward with this core element of the project because it, for the next, 4 years or something is the critical path of this job. We can address that. I think remaining decisions about the timing and, structure of the procurement, we'll probably need to consider a more holistic approach with the timing of the FMGA, but this at least we have a plan to move forward with it.
There's enough to carry it all the way through the pre-tunneling piece that's committed, or there's the.
We could build the entire tunnel.
Okay.
FMGA. We need to pay for the rest of the project in terms of stations and everything, but the tunnel itself.
I just didn't want that at a risk of suddenly there's not enough money. You're in an existing contract. Now what do you do? You give them this T and that becomes the cost.
Correct. And I think MTC has definitely had some of those questions. And so we've been working with them on, sort of a little mini funding plan that basically shows the state, regional, local sales tax paying for the tunnel. So there shouldn't be, at this point, all the steps are moving forward to be able to get those funds in place.
Thank you both.
I think one question I had, I think you've answered, but I want to clarify. The targeting to finish negotiations and sign a contract with KST by the end of July. Is that whatever? Okay, good to that. And then one of the early slides, you talk about the scope alignment that was changed. And you took all those items off of out of the scope. Yeah, this one here. All of those bottom things that were not going into the new thing, they have to be done sometime by someone, right?
Yep.
So, is negotiations going to be going on, try to find somebody to do that, or work it out, have KST eventually do it, or what's going on with that?
So I think this is where it starts getting into more of the program-wide packaging approach. So I think, and this has been going on for a while because it needed to be done regardless of if we move forward with KRT or not, because the intent was to make this a smaller package. I think it had gotten too big with some of the cost increases, and that was feedback we heard from others. So I think we're moving forward with, we have a draft packaging approach in place, but it's needing to be vetted and informed and finalized schedule in the risk register in mind. So I think currently planning for, I would say, all of the work with the exception of the internal concrete, we would like to get back on the chance to scope, but there's some value engineering stuff going on right now, so we weren't at a place to be able to agree on a price. But the remaining elements are currently being envisioned to be part of separate packages. If for some reason the schedule dictates that, we don't have time to do that, we could explore adding those things back in, which is why we wanted to keep it optional. But I think at this point, we're trying to be mindful of, we have this core scope, we want this core scope to go well, let them focus on that. And, the bottom line, like the demo utility relocations that even works, that's starting to move forward on its own track as separate packages right now. And then I think some of these other ones, like the track work in particular, there's some time to figure out, who is best to build that. So sort of making decisions from a schedule and risk-based perspective, but right now, all part of separate packages.
Sort of simplify everything for right now, get things going. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Tunnel contractors generally just want to tunnel. They kind of don't really care about the rest of those. And so we're trying to, and that was part of the industry feedback got. So, you have to look at that also considering key construction interfaces and timing, and, sometimes it's beneficial to keep it together, but it really simplifies right now how to at least continue taking the next best steps and then make sure we're not losing schedule and other things in the meantime.
Okay, so thank you, Sarah. One more quick question and we'll move on right away. Someone's asking, is the VTA decision subject to review by BART?
Yes, we have, I think Tom, who's the mega projects delivery officer overseeing this program, has been discussing this with BART under our partnership with them. So yes, I think, they have some involvement with the commercial discussions, although that really lays more with VTA as kind of a contracting and funding entity. But yes, BART has been briefed and, are comfortable with this approach.
Again, just to be clear, the BART board will not be taking an action if that was the intent of the conversation, of the question. All five behind the question. So BTA will be taking the action, but BART has been engaged.
Okay, so with that, thank you, Sarah, for that presentation. Thank you for the questions. Of course, you'll can follow up if there are any questions still needing to be answered or any come up later on. We are going to have a pretty big conversation on the design side of things as it relates to this working group. To get us started, I'm going to pass it on to Erica, but just a note, again, we're going to have a number of slides where we'll have prompts for you and we'll open up the floor for those conversations. Please focus on the prompts. And then we'll have space for more general discussion. Again, with the amount of content we have for you, we are also leaning on you, perhaps following up after the meeting with any long form feedback that you may have, just so we can get through the presentation that we have today. With that, I'm going to pass it over to
I'll be very brief. Just want to thank you all for being here and providing your feedback, knowing that we have advanced design over time, and we're here showing various examples and options to get a sense of what, you all are interested in the direction to go. What we're showing on the screen today are not the only options we have. It may not end up looking exactly like this, but we're trying to get the intent and feedback to move things along. So just wanted to share that in advance. We've heard a lot of feedback over time and are doing the best to kind of weave incorporating that feedback with the constraints we have for the project.
Thank you, Erica. And we start over with Peter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Peter. I'm an architect. I've been working on the design of these stations for a while now. I'm part of the design team, and I'm excited to show you the latest developments with the Diridon station, and specifically to focus in on some of the exterior materials and finishes of the station. So just to give everybody context of where the station is, I think we're all fairly familiar with it at this point, but directly across from the SAP Center and adjacent to where the future intermodal station will be going is the location for the BART station between Cahill and Montgomery. This slide is just to show you some of the complexity that we're dealing with in terms of all of the systems, both because it's an underground station, there's a whole series of fans and ventilation systems that are needed, as well as electrical substations and power requirements for the station that we have really worked hard to try to condense as much as possible. We're very sensitive to the fact that this is a very urban station and we want it to be both welcoming to the public and as active as possible.
And Peter, if you could go back just real quick on a note, we'll make this change when we send out the presentation, but for scale of that figure is supposed to be 6 foot per person, right? Yeah. 6 foot tall.
So yeah, just to give you a sense of scale, we put a person there on the right-hand side just to show you, these are 30 to 40 foot tall walls that are there to support all of the sort of equipment and infrastructure that's needed to run the station. So this is a view from Santa Clara Street, just a frontal elevation of the station. If you were looking from the entrance to the SAP Center, we'll go into what these different materials are, but we've from previous designs, we didn't have originally an entrance right onto Santa Clara Street, which we now have. And then this is looking, again, these are kind of raw views for any of the buildup of the surroundings or anything, but just to kind of give you that elevation view of the station from the Cahill Street side. And then this is it with some of the material palette introduced and the landscaping that's planned around there. And then we'll get into some of the material options and selections that we have around the infrastructure building that's to the right. Now we're looking again kind of without any context or anything, just at the station itself. This is it on a typical operations kind of day. And this is it when there's an event at the SAP Center with Sharks Band, etc. So it's designed to take those kind of large groups for events. And the materials that we've selected as part of the exterior material palette are really reflective of the materials used. So we haven't picked a lot of bright colors or other things. We believe that the materials, if it's steel or metal, it should look like metal. If it's concrete, it's gonna be concrete. So it's a fairly neutral palette on the exterior. We do on the interior, and we'll show you, to us, the exterior and the interior are kind of very directly related to each other. We have more kind of feature colors and some other things that we've introduced on the interior side. But on the exterior, we have fairly light and bright floors because we want to reflect as much light in as possible. They're fairly deep stations. We have some elements which are concrete, which are there to reflect where we have both structure and solid, components, and also need some acoustic separation for equipment. Stainless steel, I mean, all of these materials we're picking both for aesthetic reasons, but also for functional reasons. A lot of them, are part of what people see in BART stations today because they're long-lasting, durable materials that withstand a lot of the wear and tear that a station requires. We also know that there's an opportunity. It's not really a topic of discussion today, but we've talked about it at previous design review committees for art integration into the station that we are excited about and hope to discuss further. There's more material presentation, but we're just going to pause here for a second just to get any initial feedback on the material palette that was shown here in terms of just for the station entrance and for this portion of the station, which is really the public facing portion of the station. If anyone has any thoughts or feedback.
Okay, we're gonna go with Martin and then Tony.
Yes, I'm asking a question here because again, this is the slide. I get the real textures just because of it. But when you look at these materials, did you have an opportunity to also look at materials that were used at the SAP Center and as well as the Diridon Center, because those are two different materials, but the full history of the area. And so rather than having a satellite land with this something that's completely different, is there, did you think about perhaps there's some combination of materials and types, textures and colors that really kind of reflect the surrounding area? Right now it's parking, but again, if our Google partners ever get together, there's also that opportunity for increasing height and density, things like that. So my question is, did you have a chance to look at those materials and combine, enhance, so that again, if people start to look at this, they get a sense of that it's part of the downtown, part of that area, rather than like again a satellite just landing there outside. Yeah, we did look at all of the work that Google did and their master planning and their street planning for some sort of connection to the material selection. We didn't look specifically at the SAP Center, but I think we'd be happy to kind of discuss that and see what opportunities there are to try and create kind of a district-wide palette of materials so that it's something that does feel like it's designed and integrated and not a number of standalone buildings. So I think that's definitely an opportunity and potential. So I think we reviewed the city documents and the things that we had available to us to what is already planned there, but I think there's also a chance to do more, like you say. Also, one last observation is, I know you showed the Cahill side, but again, this is a four-sided building. there's people from all four sides, people are just gonna.
Yeah, we will get to those other elevations.
All right, I thought,
Right, so just noting for our CWG members online, I'll check in with you, Chris and Lascar, in just a second. Tony,
Yeah, two quick ones. Actually, I like the design. Is there a chance to do some sort of backlighting like downtown station, at least on the signage part, so it's identifiable? That would be great. And also, what's the soffit under the portico? What is that material at ceiling? Is that metal or?
yes, it's like tubular metal rods, and there is actually, I think it's still in the slide deck. We have a couple of options there to show you. This is a kind of metallic finish to that, but we also have a warmer tone one that we also quite like. So I think there's some opportunity for discussion there.
And as long as you have bird control, because that's the biggest thing we fight in the East Bay stations, inside, and then you end up with all that afterthought stuff, that there's ways to make sure that your design is sensitive to that, so we don't have that kind of a problem. Would be great.
awesome, thanks, Tony. Before we move on to
This slide shows that warmer tone material on the underside of the station ceiling, which again ties in a little bit with what we're doing both at the downtown and 28th Street stations. So again, like we like to think of these stations as a unified extension that has a certain look and feel. Obviously, there'll be things unique to 28th Street, Little Portugal, and unique to Diridon, but there is a certain consistency across them that I think we think this is potentially a nice option.
Great, just noting, for a comment online, get a comment from Chris that the palette looks good, the teal trim inside is a nice touch. So.
Yeah, we have a
that comment.
We have one like a sneak preview of the interior of the station that we'll show again.
Wonderful. Thanks for that comment. We'll check back in a bit. Noting for our presenters, we have, at the moment, 21 minutes to this section, before we need to move on to the downtown conversation.
I'll be quick. So another change or development from maybe the last time that you've seen the station, and one of the topics for today is the integration of that infrastructure building or facility that's adjacent to the entrance to the station. And in the other stations at 28th Street and downtown, it's actually a separate building, but in this station, it's integrated into the station building itself. And so we felt, rather than treating these as two separate buildings, we wanted them to read as one building. And so we've taken that edge banding around the canopy and the overhang of the front entrance of the station and brought it across so that it feels as though it's all one unified building. And then we've also introduced where there are steel columns supporting the canopy on the entrance side, try and bring that rhythm to the infrastructure side of it. And we'll show you some ideas of how those different bays between the columns could be potentially occupied in the future. So this is, again, I kind of go through a similar process with the Montgomery Street side. This is looking kind of just at the naked elevation with no materials or animation. And then this is it with some of those same materials expressed. So at the moment, what we're showing in that lower section, where we have a lot of equipment behind those walls and everything, is a solid concrete wall. But then using the steel and the extension of the roof line to create these bays, which we hope have some more animation and activation in the future. And then the upper portion of that will show a few different material options for those. So I think we're all familiar with San Pedro Street, where we have a parking garage at ground level, and there's always an issue with any use where the ground plane is not really activated. And so this was a small project to provide small businesses places for retail activation along the parking garage. There's many other examples of these kind of pop-up market stalls that exist all around the world. We've done a number of them ourselves. And the idea would be that by creating those bays and continuing the rhythm of the columns, we then create opportunities for those to be integrated into the future state of the station along both Montgomery and Cahill Street. So even though it's not part of the BART project per se, it's still something that when we design the building, we kind of want to be thinking about and hopefully planning for that future activation as the area around the station grows. So now just looking at the Cahill Street side, this is kind of how that facade might look on day one. And we have now a few different materials that we're showing for the upper portion of that infrastructure facility. This one is a translucent panel, which could have illumination to it. It could be just kind of lit at night and backlit. It could also have potentially different colors or, integration of different types of lighting to it. So that has kind of a more dynamic effect than just a standard metal panel. But it is also possible to do more traditional metal panel that would still have a nice reflective quality. And so, more during the daytime, you would get nice reflections off of that. And then this is just showing one kind of type of texture or three-dimensional effect that we can create either, with metal or GFRC, where you could get different, either ribbed patterns or, with precast, you can get all different types of textures or patterns with that paneling. So doing something that has more grain to it than just a flat panel. So I think those are all ways that we're thinking about that upper portion of the facade and how that could become something of a feature rather than just a blank wall. So I think that's the trigger for the next round of questions and discussion.
Yeah, so looking around, I see James is gonna speak in just a moment. Nate, I'll check in with you after James, but let's start here, and again, online, I'll check in with you all as well.
So the parking lot across the street from the green, no business will be impaired.
Sorry, this is the Cahill Street side. So yes, it's SAP Center. You can see just on the left there.
Right.
Yeah.
But where the structure is itself, that's the
Yes,
parking
it's the
lot
parking
today.
lot. Yes.
What was that? Thank you. Eric?
Thanks. Yeah, I really like these explorations here for Diridon and the activation. At this point, this is like your first stab at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, Nate here and OED obviously have talked a lot about with the businesses about especially startup business, what their needs are. So obviously when the time comes, it'd be good to really leverage that knowledge. There's a whole range of considerations. I know the moment shops are set up, for example, to lower overhead costs, like they have like one cashier for 4 shops. So obviously that's a little tricky with this layout. But there's a bunch of things. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, not really. We talked to you guys in a separate meeting last week about this. We don't necessarily feel that, we not to reiterate the whole thing and not to take up too much time, but we created Moments in Pager, which reopens on Thursday, by the way, for the start of facilities, and grand opening ribbon cutting on Friday at 11:30. You're invited. We did that to solve a problem. We didn't. It seems odd to include it in the beginning, like creating it. If the garage was designed properly or the street was laid out properly, we wouldn't have needed to spend $750,000 to take a tractor to it to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
45 years later, you know what I mean? So it's just it's odd to see it invoked as a solution to something that has not been built yet.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, ideally we would be planning in advance so that it wouldn't require bulldozers and other things. It would kind of be ready to go.
Yeah.
Understood.
Eric, were you gonna know anything on this?
Yeah, I was gonna say, given that we have space constraints, and again, the desire for activation is why we are exploring this, right? Definitely. So we're trying to thread that needle, as I mentioned, right? So
Right.
definitely great feedback and definitely we'll set up a meeting specifically OED and downtown application.
Thanks.
Whilst I want to check in with you before we move on, but, Martin.
And let's take forward the three, analysis that you're going through and looking at these tonight. I agree with you that in terms of how that's going to affect the current and the future is really important. And think about the future is also valuable and important to be able to have that opportunity, in fact, that does come around the area needs to be engaged and sort of need to have opportunities. But I do like that. There's one last thing too, and I'll, it'd be good that when we see this, even though this is KO, it'd be nice to just get a quick glance of all four, three sides, the other three sides, just again, so that we can get a sense of what that looks like as it turns the corner. And being a landscape architect or designer, it would also be great to see how it's landing corner and curve to curve, how that is going to engage, because that material and the lighting also is going to really add to this really incredible opportunity in sight. So something to consider as we start to talk about this week.
Tony, I see you raised your nameplate. Want to check in online? Are there any comments before I finish with you, Tony? Any comments online from our CWG members?
Yeah, back to Mark's point, at one point we talked about DoD possibilities around that station. Is that still in the game plan as far as overall design concepts, not part of this project, but the opportunity to do something around the station?
Yeah.
It's still part of it.
Yeah, so when we moved, you may recall, when we moved the station infrastructure facility above grade, we worked closely with VTA's multi-building planning and real estate department just to make sure that we had depth behind where a potential development could be placed. So once, I think in a few minutes, Greg's going to talk about the plaza, and then you'll see kind of where in the back end where we're showing plaza now that could be replaced by a future development.
Yeah. To the right of these images, there is a parcel that's available for TOD. So the other thing just to mention is that we're fully aware of the intermodal station that will be built across the street from this station, and that Cahill Street eventually will become a pedestrianized space that is almost a plaza unto itself with a lot of circulation and activity. And so part of this approach is both thinking about from the landscape perspective and from that activation perspective, how we can take what might look like this in the beginning and transform it into something that is like a plaza-like space. So this is an idea of how in the future, when Cahill is closed off, that space can become much more active, and all those pop-up shop fronts and other things can become part of that plaza space. And then, as I mentioned, we were just going to give we're not talking about the interior of the station so much in this presentation. I think it's scheduled for the next presentation. But in terms of bringing materials from outside to inside and using a similar kind of palette, we wanted to just show this image of the station interior. And I think you can see from this that it's both a generously sized space. The ceiling heights are over 18 feet, so they're between 18 and 20 feet tall. And we think that it's going to be a great arrival point for people coming to events at the SAP Center or just coming into downtown San Jose.
Yeah. So I do believe this is where we get some space for general discussion. And we can spend something like 5 to 10 minutes on this if there are broad thoughts that folks here want to share. Specifically, how does this land with you? Anything stand out to you? That kind of thing. I want to start with James. I want to make my way around the room and checking online. So
Yeah, let's be optimistic view of how many people are going to be in the station.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Let's give you an optimistic view as to how many people are going to be in the station.
We are optimists. Wouldn't be an architect if I wasn't. But I think the ridership numbers do project, thousands of people per day. So let's hope that that is the case.
Thanks. Tony?
Okay.
Nothing with you? Martin?
Again, I like the progress as we're moving forward. I know from the arena, many of our events are on mid-afternoon and evening. So as time moves on, I think having a views of what it looks like in the evening also could really get an idea of what that facade ultimately would look like and express itself, because again, a lot of our events are in the evening when there's a lot of those happening. So ensuring that that's part of the discussion also.
Thanks, Mark.
I'd just like to bring up that make sure you include with the interior color scheme and any accent lighting colors, that you also include the colors for the professional women's hockey team. That's gonna have not just teal for the Sharks, but also gonna have another team.
Yeah, good point. Thanks, Bert.
No, I'm okay.
Man, okay, Walker.
No, no comments.
Okay, and I do know we have Lauren Smith online as well. Any thoughts you'd like to share? And Lauren is representing for Edwards.
I just remember Lauren to panelists, so she.
Okay.
Hi, Lauren Smith. I heard my name.
Yes, just checking in. I know that you're here standing in for a CWG member.
Yes, thank you. I was going to ask the architect if there was thought put into the longevity of the material. We speak of metals, both from a longevity and sustainability perspective, as well as a maintenance perspective. And I know that's a pretty gigantic question, but I'm curious to hear your thinking on that.
Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Definitely it is on our mind, the longevity of the materials. So where we have materials that are like, especially within arm's reach of somebody, where there's going to be a lot of banging or, potentially, interaction, then we're using much more heavier gauge and more robust materials. I think when I talked about the tubular ceiling, that's sort of out of reach of people, so that would possibly be aluminum as opposed to steel, but it's, I think it is very much on our minds. And then even with concrete, we are always specifying a vandal-proof coating to them, so that if there's graffiti or other things, that they can be easily cleaned. But yeah, I think both from a sustainability standpoint and ongoing maintenance and durability, it's very much, a lot of the feedback we've received from BART on materials and things has been with that in mind. So we know there's a limited budget for maintenance on the stations and other things, that we want it to be something that is both easy to clean or not necessary to clean as frequently. So we're limiting, any type of glass or other things that require a lot of ongoing maintenance as much as we can.
Thanks, Peter. Well, we're ahead, so let's keep going then, and get back to discussion after the next section. I believe, is this still you or?
I think this is Greg.
Hi, everybody, Greg Tebow, Facilities Engineering Manager, for the program. So here's the site plan of the overall, configuration. Again, this is between Cahill and Montgomery and right across the street from the SAP Center in the current existing, parking lot. This does show all kind of 4 quadrants. We've got landscaping, we've got bicycle parking, we've got some open areas, kind of around the entire site itself. And as Erica mentioned, the area here could be used for a future TOD development, adjacent to this Post Street extension. This is also part of our project, is to extend Post Street. Just a general layout of kind of what the infrastructure is related to bicycle parking. We've got a wide variety of bike parking areas. We've got the standard kind of locker style. We've got bike racks. We've got future bike racks. And then we also have a bicycle parking room, which is adjacent to Santa Clara Street and in the front west corner of the facility. That's similar to kind of the bike parking area that VTA has with the other two BART stations that we've built to date. We do have a future or a retail kiosk that we've kind of integrated here. So I know Peter talked a little bit about pop-up areas and windows. We are providing a space for a little retail facility out here. We think that's a pretty good spot for it. Also not shown on this drawing, but what we do have the bus facilities, and rapid bus stop positions along Santa Clara Street, right directly in front of the station. So that will also be integrated kind of into our station design itself. So different type of plaza materials. We just heard about, you know, the robustness and maintainability of the infrastructure associated with the plaza facade itself. Same thing for the plaza materials. We want to make sure any seating, things like that are provided that are going to have a robust quality to them and be easily to maintain. So that's why we've kind of got a few different examples of things that could be utilized. We definitely want to get some feedback from the group here, but this is kind of the general configuration that we're looking at. We do have a couple different patterns. We do think that a paver type element can be invoked at the front of the station as well as almost all the way around. But this is kind of a one option where we've got kind of a light and dark contrasting paver scenario. And we call this the gradient pattern. So this allows for kind of a different pattern of paving that comes out of the station or into the station, going from that dark to light. Again, this can be configured in a lot of different ways, but we just kind of wanted to get some feedback from the group here on what that looks like. Another option that we wanted to look into was kind of really mimicking that roof line and that roof center line, or that roof edge line out into the sidewalk, and really kind of invoke that entire station round kind of entranceway out into the area. Now this does integrate paving patterns through the sidewalk, so that's something we worked with the city of San Jose on. You know, the previous slide kind of showed our pattern stopping at the sidewalk. The next one brings kind of that pattern into the sidewalk area. So those are kind of the real differences there. But again, whether it's that gradient pattern or whether we have the circular banding, it really kind of mimics that roof line. I wanted to get some feedback from the group here on those alternatives. So those are kind of two different options that we've got here. We're only really talking about the front side. That is kind of the station entrance area. We do have opportunities in the back side, but you know, we are limited to what we're going to do on the backside facing post because that does have the future TOD opportunities there. So we really want to make sure the front of the station is where we focus a lot of our efforts. Okay, so maybe some thoughts, opinions, feedback on color type, gradient paving, circular banding, how that front of that station is looking like. We good if we get some feedback from folks, or we'll open it up.
Great, thank you. All right, Tony, let's start with you and Eric.
Love the circular banding, especially for getting through the sidewalk. I think it's really amazing because it kind of radiates to SAP back. I think just maintain that circular pattern piece also respects a little bit about what the arena itself that's got, not just flat surfaces there. It's all kinds of articulation. I really like that circular.
Thanks, Tony. Eric and Mark.
I think I would refer back to what Martin said earlier about, you know, they're advocating for a unified feel, and I think obviously the same should apply to this. And out of all of the elements here, I think the relationship to the Diridon hub is most important, right? In terms of all the modes coming, this is really one mode at the Diridon hub in our view. So I think that integration is really key. If it can also, you know, speak to what's going on at SAP, that's good. I think a little less critical from like a passenger use perspective.
I'm sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think like the pattern protection, phasing, portal, but again, that represents the area, I think is really important. Another thing, just, I've been driving to the San Francisco train station quite a bit, and I think now, having Uber or Lyft drop off locations, easily identified to your neighborhood, because that's important. And I think having a bus stop right in front of the station is interesting. And it could be, challenging, because again, people need to have shade when they're waiting for the bus and things, and so having a station or a canopy that is representative of something, I think is, if that is where that location needs to be. But if we can go back to the social site real quick, I have one more question. What is on Cahill Street, that indentation with the sidewalk, what is that?
So this is a kind of a duck out for emergency vehicles. So we gotta make sure that we provide a close enough location for a fire truck to actually service this building if there were an emergency situation. So that's why we have to have that slight indent in the area. There will not be this will not be allowed to be publicly parked. Like, this will be an emergency loading zone, essentially. There are some areas here for some public parking out in this area here. There could be drop-off zones. There's some things that we need to work with the city on. We as a station also need some parking here. There's BART police parking. There's some other things that we need to make sure we maintain that front the station. But we can explain that the next time if that's something that the group really wants some feedback on. And Eric, I know we've gone back and forth, but how this is going to operate in terms of parking and lane configuration. Montgomery. So it's a work in progress.
All right, we are a couple minutes behind. Anybody online have any comments? And as we wait for people online, is there anything more on this session that any representatives want to say? Right.
Just that, right now there is a fairly large open area in front of the station. And that's where kind of a lot of folks for this integrated bus stop could wait for that bus. So that does provide some shelter. And this roof line is fairly robust in terms of how far out it is in front of the fare gates and in front of this area here. So that's kind of what we're thinking.
It's also, north facing, so the sun is coming from that side, so you should be shaded. We kind of played around with whether that could be considered the bus stop, but it actually needs to be closer to the curb, so people can wait there, but it's not officially the bus stop.
Okay, before we move on, checking in with Lauren and Lester, any comments from you?
No comment, thank you.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. So, for the bus, I know there's a lot of interplay with the hub, right? And let's assume for that, and we're expecting long term most of the buses to be under the tracks, right? But so is this an interim thing, or is this viewed as
this is opening day?
This is BRT bus stop, I believe, is planned for right in front of the station.
Okay.
So we're planning for, this is showing the opening day configuration.
Mm-hmm.
If intermodal gets constructed and a whole new bus operation goes somewhere else, then that would be something that needs to be addressed that way.
Pretty tight.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. So, Greg, I'll pass it back to you. We're about 5 minutes behind.
Okay.
15 minutes.
I think that's about all I have for. Oh, these are some paving patterns. So again, I think there's things we could talk about, but whether it's contrasting patterns. The next thing we're going to talk about is the East Bend shaft. So this is right down the street from the downtown facility. So let's get out of Diridon. We're going to go down to Santa Clara, down to 3rd Street, different station. This is an emergency ventilation shaft as well as the emergency egress corridor. So this is the main primary head house, which we're not going to talk about today, just going to mark it first. A couple blocks down, 3rd and Santa Clara, the old, the area here. This is what we've got to have for the emergency ventilation shaft as well as the emergency egress shaft. Folks have asked what is inside of this building. This just shows you kind of what we have to have in this structure itself. We've got a generator, we've got all of our ductwork that go down to the tunnel itself. We got a few different staircases, one for the fire department, one for the passengers, and then we've got an access hatch that provides equipment that goes all the way up and down. There is no elevator core in here. There's only staircases. This is generally what this shaft is. So you can see the tunnel is 54 feet in diameter. This shaft is approximately 90 feet in diameter. And it goes down approximately 100 feet. We're looking at, and then we've got, this approximately, it'll look like about a two-story building, two-story structure above with a little penthouse and some equipment up on the roof. So this is a very large structure, and this houses a lot of equipment. Similar to what Peter had showed earlier, we've got a lot of different things that are happening along all these little basement levels that go all the way down. There's things inside of each one of these floors, as well as areas that are up on the street level. There's a lot of access points that are required from the street level for fire department access, valve rooms, fire control panels, access for the equipment that would actually be, this is the shaft that equipment could be utilized to come out of the tunnel, wheeled over, and then brought up to the top and brought in and out and serviced by BART. So there's a lot of stuff happening at this facility. This is what the existing condition looked like about 15 years ago. On the left, this is what it looks like today, approximately. One of the concepts we have is to, and this is a couple of buildings across the street. We've got the Hankoka Furniture Facility building on the southwest corner, a couple other buildings. So one of the approaches that we've had is just to try to kind of fit into that existing architecture. So that's the first option we'll show today. That's what this building could look like. We use the same color palette that is out there today. Not to say that everybody likes that, but that's just what we use to potentially show it. We fit a few of the different ornamental elements, in this area. It doesn't have to be square. It doesn't have to be round. We just show that there's a few different ornamental patterns that we can integrate into this facility. We call this a decorative panel example. And again, we've got some robust material down on the bottom side. We think this is going to be a concrete panel or a GFRC, glass fiber reinforced concrete panel that would surround the overall facility, and then maybe a different texture up above. This lower textured pattern can be a variety of different themes, whether it's a horizontal band, a vertical band. There's a lot of different patterns that we can integrate into a concrete system. We do have some activated window areas facing Santa Clara Street and 3rd Street. We're going to work with the city and the VTA and the city OED on how we can kind of make these things work. So this is a work in progress of how we can either have some artwork in here or maybe have some of those pop-up things that we talked about before. And maybe make this a lot more activated. So we're going to continue to work through that. This is a view looking west on 3rd Street. This is an example of just kind of a plain facility without any paint on it. Doesn't necessarily have to be this color gray. We just wanted to show you that this is kind of without that bright orange, ochre, goldenrod, dandelion, whatever color that was picked. Yellow. Yes, yellow, right? So we just wanted to show you this is kind of what it could look like without that color pattern. And again, this is looking west. This is a different color option. Also wanted to show you that we can kind of do a couple different color scenarios there. This is kind of a teal-ish pattern or color. And maybe a couple different types of colors there. So just wanted to show that doesn't necessarily have to be the goldenrod. One thing we can do is maybe make some of these panels available to artistic expression. So this is kind of just a sample of kind of what's out there today. We just overlaid it on one of those sections. So maybe a couple different areas, we can maybe look at some of those murals and allow for some artwork to be integrated into the side of the structure. And again, we're really looking for that robust GFRC or concrete panel, low maintenance, easy to maintain, highly durable. Those are the things that are the qualities we're really looking for on that lower panel. So that's the general configuration of this decorative panel facade element. So I wanted to ask the group a few questions about what you feel about this particular configuration and layout, and then we can go on.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read through the questions that you see on the screen. We'll leave them here on the screen, and of course, we can go back to the visuals as well. But as you come up with anything you want to answer with, turn over your plate or raise your hand if you're online. Question one, what do you think of the decorative panel design style and direction? Question two, do you feel the decorative panel example fits into the urban fabric of downtown? Then goes, do you prefer a vibrant color option? And lastly, what do you think of reserving space on the wall for potential mural, the way that we saw in the visual there? Gonna start with Nate, check in with anybody else that has anything to say. Go ahead, Nate.
Thanks, everyone. I know this structure is necessary, but it's so depressing. It's just, if you think about the rhythm of the blocks of downtown, there's the empty J. Paul office building on First, there's the empty Dr. U building on Second, and then as you continue towards City Hall, now we're taking a corner and making it so it can't ever really be vibrant, like contributing to vibrancy. And I know if there's an emergency, people need to get out, and I know you need to stash equipment there. I've been in all these meetings, I know that. But seeing, like, kind of sitting here the whole meeting waiting to see what it might look like is just really, really, I'll just keep using the word depressing. Certainly not the gray. And yeah, if you have to do murals to try to put lipstick on the pig, yeah, of course I support that. Yeah, if I don't know what the depth of the space is, or if it would be usable for anything besides artwork, like in the rendering, and I know not to base too much on a rendering, they look more like dressed windows of what you might see in like a department store in a movie or something. I don't know if there's depth to them or not, or if those are just like, if there's just literally enough room for paint, so they're murals as well, and I can hear a clarification on that when I'm done with my rant. But basically, I don't know if rhyming the teal with the Clariana across the street is the right thing. I'm not an architect. I'm not even like a super aesthetic person. I just think it has to get on the record that this is such a bummer, and that this blocking development on this corner essentially forever just doesn't seem like the right thing to do, in my opinion. So yes, please dress it up, make it pretty. I'll trust the experts to do that. And if you want some feedback from, we have some great person in our office who does all of our murals and all of our landscaping, and I'd love to introduce you to Lou sometime. But what I'm seeing today is just like really, really bumming me out, and I will stop there.
Next night. And just knowing we are gonna see another, we're gonna look at another option in short order. But I guess to ask the question that Nate asked about the depth of the glass.
Yeah, so right now, Nate, we've got the ability, there's several feet, so we can put in the Stanley Cup there when it's won. And
so the window dressing example is not that far.
It's not, that's our current configuration.
Okay.
I think we, as a program, want to work with the city and with our partners here today, like yourself, to understand how we can maybe adjust how this structure is laid out, and maybe make a little bit more integrated activation for that area. And I think we've gotten some feedback from the board to ask us to do that. And so, we will continue to work through that, and I understand where you're coming from and the depression. But we will continue to work through trying to make that more of a usable corner.
Look forward to it. Thanks.
And, yeah, okay.
Great. So we'll check in with Tony, finishing up with Martin. We then move on to the next option. Or
Yeah, and we have one.
Yeah, I love the idea of the decorative panel. I think that's great. And the colors, I mean, there is sort of an eclectic pattern colors down there, but I know that there's been sentiment, at least on our housing land use committee, about the building that would be demolished. And I don't know if there's ways to take parts of that and replicate it into the fabric. And if you look at most of the buildings down there, there's quite a bit of orange sporting around there. I mean, and that would, I think, be nice, nice touch just to kind of finish that off. So it blends it back in a little bit better. But you have a question on the generator. Is that natural gas or the diesel generator that has to be exercised?
Yeah, once a month or so, it would need to be exercised. Yes.
Did you have any follow-up on that?
But it's just noisy and a big problem. So it comes up. I mean, I don't know if there's other, have you looked at natural gas or other types of
I
generators?
believe right now all of our generators are diesel mounted.
Yeah.
One thing that allows us to do is reduce the number of batteries that we have, which were expensive. So we reduced the number of battery backups and went with the diesel generator. So these stations essentially are going to be fully functional during an emergency event for quite some time. So that's really why we need the generator here. We need a generator at Diridon Station. We need a generator at 28th Street, and then a few more at Santa Clara.
Okay, gonna finish up with Martin, then move on to talk about the next.
I fully hear what you're saying, Nate, and Tony, I fully agree if there's some way that existing building can be used, because again, that's the fabric of the economy that's slowly taking place, and the wall shouldn't put protective panels, because need something to be like a little bit more in depth in terms of what that really looks like, because again, that is a Third Street corner on Third Street, so I hope we could look at something that's really going. I know it's gonna not enhance it, because again, as Nate mentioned, it's just a block, so we need to really be creative with that in terms of how that actually represents the community in that area.
Thanks, Martin. Greg?
Okay. So the next alternative maybe shows you a little bit of a different concept. This is more of a modern concept that reflects a little bit more of what is shown at the downtown area with the translucent metal panels, translucent panels. Again, this has an integrated lighting component. We think this, it's sometimes difficult to reflect, when you build a brand new structure, to make it look like an older structure that was built 210 years ago across the street. Sometimes that doesn't quite work. So we want to get the opinion of the group here, whether kind of going with a more modern approach, does that reflect well with this area? Understanding the activation, we know that, but what about the building's look and feel? How does that work in the current environment? Again, very similar materials on the lower half. Those can be patterned any way we want, any way that the group really feels that can work out. But we do to make sure that they're durable and resist the things like graffiti. So again, I'll just leave it here for a minute. But what do you think about this more modern approach? What are some of the comments and feedback that you might have on this concept? And we'll leave the questions up here.
Thanks. Nate?
I prefer the second approach, the more modern approach. We recently did a survey of our PBID members, which is mostly property owners. It ends up being condo owners who apply. You can't get like a REIT to reply to a survey, which is a whole different thing. But they said lighting is one of the number one things that they want to see more of downtown. More lighting. And so I think integrating lighting in a way that is changeable and is kind of in line with some of the things we do in Circle of Palms, the wash lighting on Santa Clara that's already been installed, and the San Pedro Arches program where we can change it for various holidays, various activations, things like that. I think that would fit into the fabric of downtown a little bit better and is slightly less depressing.
Slightly less than
Yes, good. Moving in the right direction.
Thanks, Nate. Eric?
Yeah, I think I agree with Nate. And I also think I recall, Peter, you and Angus did a really good study, I think, on the vernacular here, right? And so this is the first step, but I think I really like what you did. So I hope you look back at that and, you know, you look at the Hammer building and I mean, you did a really good survey. And then since then we've had new buildings, right? The Adobe Bridge, I think they did a good job, right? This idea of, so it's this Art Deco elements, there's City Hall, sort of this modern Chrysler building-ish kind of look. And then, yeah, lighting, then of course the Market Street garage, we haven't seen yet, but that's again reinforcing, the neon lights is something of San Jose. So I think there's a lot to build on in those respects.
Okay. Tony and then Martin, and then I'll check in with Wafra and Lauren online.
Yeah, I agree with Nate there. It's like, well, I just say the best for last.
Mhm.
The concept, of whatever's happening, downtown station still had that luminous thing. The fact that it's BART station, there's a little bit of tie that way, even it's a couple blocks away. But you still have opportunity in the lower areas to do something with decorative, you know, whatever it might be. But the concept of the lighting, I'm a big light guy, so I like what's happening there. I've got some people texted in their list and saying the same thing, so I think you're on.
Tony, before we move on and go on to Martin, I want to ask you and others here in the room. We saw the option of putting in a mural on that side on Third Street. For a decorative wall is another option. You just mentioned that. What do you think would be the better approach?
I like the concepts of murals. We had quite a few. I think we had like 12 or something from the downtown. I didn't know there was that many until Janica spoke to me one day. She took leadership San Jose around and they all came back raving about it. There's some really good local muralists. And I'm not sure if you're using any name. The person you were talking about, is that a muralist or just a?
She's our street life manager.
Oh.
She works with local arts group and directly with artists at times. She's we've had a street life program for something like 10 years and
Yeah.
they're responsible for not all, but many of the murals and their maintenance and their selections and cultural representation, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, it could be an opportunity to do something to a building that had some history to the people, especially in that area, but maybe there's something that could be done artistically that takes away that blankness of the panel. And whatever you can do with that the glass piece or whatnot, I mean, that's not an opportunity for light. That might be an opportunity for display, you know, parts of the building, whatever, just depends on what neighborhood those like. But I do like the translucent.
Erica, you want to say something?
I just have a follow-up question. Would you go online? If the more modern version could not have light, would you still prefer it over the other? Because everyone's talking about the light, but if for some reason we weren't able to do the lighting, I just want to get a sense of if lighting wasn't available, what would the choice be? I mean, would you still stick with that choice, or would you then prefer to go back to something that would have it blended more?
Whatever makes Nate less depressed.
That's a interesting question. It's a hard question. It's hard not to get entranced by the rendering. You know what I mean? It's hard to think about. It's so brutalist in its. The previous one is just so not what we want to see down here. So I guess, yeah, even if the translucent panel didn't light up, I would still prefer this because it gives like a different sense of scale and kind of an airiness. It's just less blocky in general because of the material. So yes, I suppose I would still prefer the latter.
Okay. Do you mind if I move on to Martin? It's been.
No, yeah, keep going.
So let me check.
I prefer the lighting approach myself, because again, it's the energy system, so it kind of has some internal interest in terms of how it works. And then we have so many holidays and interesting things that use that lighting to really promote that. Here, for example, we have World Cup, 40 Mile Day. We have all kinds of things that could make this other than the block, corner block. that doesn't have anything else on it. So I think personally, I think I prefer to have something that has lighting on it, as a option to move forward.
Okay, you want to add something?
I was just gonna say that at our mid-July meeting, we can bring back some, another look that doesn't have lighting, just to further that kind of discussion, just for our awareness.
If there are also city programs that could supplement the budget for the lighting. Quite a bit up there, it's right before with VOD, so that might be an opportunity for a special group to do something in order to get that, if it's that important to the community.
Totally, yes. I'm just trying, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're trying to understand the lay of the land, right? So asking the questions to help. That's moving forward.
Check in with the folks online, James, is there anything you want to add to the conversation here?
I'm good.
Good, thank you. Anybody online, Oscar or Lauren, before we move on?
Yeah, I wanted to echo Swascott. Just wanted to echo a lot of sentiments around around the lighting. I think it's great. And just the ability to change it depending on the event and kind of what's going on to really better activate that space and really just give it some give it some light and life. And then big +1 to like thinking through the muralists. I think yes to the mural. And like what kind of process to do that. It looks like there's folks that are already tapped in with local arts groups, but also see what like a broader community process is. I mean, yes, this is a downtown project, but this is also a big new addition to the entire city. And so, whatever piece would be there probably should reflect the fabric and identity of kind of our entire city. So be excited to think about that with a lot more folks.
Thanks, Lauren.
Lauren here. Can I jump in for a moment? I wanted to challenge the thought and just ask a question. Can we have both something that gives a nod to the architecture, but also adds a modern feel? Are we set with having an either or situation? Can there be a merge of the two? I don't specifically have a concept, but I was starting to mash it in my mind to see where that would go. And then the second thing I wanted to add is the window displays could be, first of all, echoing the mural for absolute certain. That gives so much integrity and identity to the city with the wonderful murals that we have. I've recently been involved in that. And what I was starting to think is, could those window displays be some kind of panels that would feature art that would change? Depending on budget and scale and what could be done with the building structurally. If it had to stay to the earlier comment about being more of a traditional or somber shape, could the lighting in the window box areas be a panel that would somehow change to reflect art of the city, just if the top lighting couldn't be done? So just throwing out some thoughts.
Thank you. Response.
Yeah, I would say that we definitely can look at something to try and merge the two and see what we can come up with to bring back to the group. It doesn't have to be either or. So.
Yeah, and again, those window boxes, I'm gonna call them, aren't just painted glass right now. They actually do have depth. So we are gonna look at how deep they can be and how they could be maybe activated with some activated space.
Wonderful. I believe this is the last slide of the session, yes?
Yes.
One quick one.
Oh, I see Eric and Tony. Do you mind if I go with Eric and finish with you? I apologize.
Very quickly, no, I wanted to underscore again what Nate said about the importance, and this is just a very prominent site. And we have many missing teeth, if you will, on the north side of Santa Clara Street. So please, Greg and others, let's keep looking at whether this can be an active frontage. I mean, like he mentioned, there's the Dr. U building, right, which is challenging with all the contamination. The J. Paul, they've done sort of a good job with like
Renovations. We did that.
right. It's very attractive, but it's still an empty building. So yeah, it's just doubly important to see if we can find a way to activate this very prominent corner.
Thanks, Eric. Tony?
I was gonna say, we've got Big Partners San Jose State, a couple of blocks away, it might be a great opportunity to do something interactively with their art department. There's probably a bunch of the writers walking by that every day twice and then back to the station because we see that as a primary piece in theater for the commuters that come into college. So this might be an opportunity to do something there. And then get back to life. Sparks are playing football, right? Throw those colors up, right? Something like that. So.
Thanks all. With that, we can move on to the construction update.
All right, so I'm going to be very brief and focus on things in the area tonight, and not give you a West Portal construction update. If interested, we will be presenting that update on Thursday at Santa Clara CWG, and we can have distribute the slides progress. But really, we wanted to spend time focusing on a lot on the design tonight and have limited our construction update here. So I wanted to let you all know about upcoming temporary parking lot closure. Parking lot across from the SAP Center, south of Santa Clara Street between Montgomery and Barack Obama will be temporarily closed from July 20th through October 18th for us to do some additional preparatory work and soils testing there. We have been coordinating with the Sharks and we're able to push this up a little bit per the request to have less impact on the hockey season. So we're happy to have been able to accommodate that a little bit to complete our testing in mid-October. There will be no changes to pedestrian access or circulation, and just that parking lot there itself will be closed. So we've been working with, as I mentioned, the Sharks and the city and other key stakeholders, and are developing a bunch of outreach materials that we will be distributing, public notices. We will have information up on our website. We will encourage you all and provide you with information to help amplify out to your constituents and communities. We will have signage and continue to collaborate, but just wanted to let you all know in advance that will be happening. And then want to give an update on the construction transportation management plan. This is just a reminder, high level of the process where we go through developing the plan with the city, and then we engage with adjacent neighbors and then have a community meeting. So we had started CTMP for Downtown-Diridon a couple of years ago and put that on hold. We have reconvened and reestablished the development of that. And so we will have more details to share at the upcoming meeting, but just sharing for awareness that that process is back in motion. And we will be having that public meeting sometime in the first quarter of 27. So that's kind of the timing working through the development now. So I just wanted to give you an update on that progress. And that's the construction update.
What questions on the construction update, Tony?
Just real quick, we now have a transportation committee at the chamber, so it'd be great to align that with that group because then they can broadcast that through text businesses and whatnot, and we have a direct conduit. That'd be great if we can do that.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Last week, there was a discussion about the infrastructure utility relocation renovation. Was any belief or what that's going to affect, how it's going to affect these properties? Is that an upgrade or is that on a schedule somewhere?
Okay. Provide that after.
It was called the infrastructure utility relocation renovation. It's before tunneling. There's supposed to be a utility companies are supposed to look at the existing utilities on Santa Clara Street, if there's upgrade those earlier than later.
That was in the schedule that I think Sarah presented. Is that what you're asking about?
I was our last meeting, yeah. I think so, yes. It was a discussion in terms of when that's going to happen, because that was going to be before some of the funding just to get that started.
Right, the advanced utility relocations. We can come back with an update on that. I don't know top of mind what relocations are needed in the area. I know some work has already been occurring over time in Santa Clara Street, but we can come back with more of an update.
Yeah, I don't even said that when I was working, putting your utility back lot bigger than you gave it today. So there's a lot, I want to make sure that we put that early to
Definitely.
forecast that as we start to think about this moving forward.
Okay, so with that, as we land this plane, we'll pass on next steps. One item that you'll see if you are online, we do have a poll, as we will always at these regular meetings, where we want you to give some feedback on this meeting, specifically how we did. We're hoping to improve as we go. So that's gonna be sent, by the admin, shortly in the chat. Members of the public that use the Q&A function to send in, some comments and questions. We have them in our records. We won't get to them, here in the conversation in the meeting today, unfortunately, but we do have them. So thank you for sending them our way. Gonna go through, these updates. Want to note for those of you who are here in person, as we did last time, we have this QR code that you can use to access the same poll that we are sharing on the chat online. So please, we really want your feedback, see how we're doing over time, set some trends, and hopefully improve, as I mentioned. The next meeting that the Downtown-Diridon CWG is going to have is the interim, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, that will be on Tuesday, July 21st, 2026, 4 p.m. and that'll be at the BSB's project office over at De La Cruz. So at that conversation, we are going to be talking about downtown BART station design updates. Again, super important as a follow-up to the earlier conversation that we had in May. That's going to include interior station design, material siding placements, exterior station materials and finishes, station infrastructure, facility architecture, outwork, and etc. After that, we have 2 more regular meetings in 2026 that would, as of right now, be set for Tuesday, September 15th at the same location. And then the last of the year will be November 17th, also a Tuesday as always, 4 p.m. at this location. For the interim, of course, we will, we already have sent information on that meeting. However, we will send more communications about it and might be calling you as well to make sure that you're aware that it's happening and hopefully get your RSVP. Okay, a couple more VTA meetings. We have the VTA BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 Oversight Committee meeting happening this Thursday, the 11th. That is midday, 12 p.m. And that is happening at the VTA Conference Room B106 over on the North First Street campus. And then we have the VTA Board of Directors meeting happening on Thursday, June 26th at 9 a.m. And that, of course, happens at the county building at 70 West Heading Street at the Chambers. Any broad questions about what I just shared or anything else before we close out? It is 6 p.m. I like to end on time. Anything comes to mind for everybody? Okay, thank you all for making time to be here with us again, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
It's just a beginning of the Diridon. Was there about email? Not really. Yep. That was the comments.
Yeah, no, reminder.